In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and dreams often felt just out of reach, lived a man who had made it big. He was one of those self-made billionaires everyone talked about, the kind you'd see on magazine covers or hear about in podcasts. His name wasn't important, but his story was. This guy had built an empire from scratch, turning zeros into millions with sheer grit and smart thinking. But despite all his success, there was one thing he couldn't conquer: his kids. The twins were something else entirely. They weren't your average children by any stretch of the imagination. Both incredibly sharp, they had minds that raced faster than most adults could keep up with. The problem? Their energy wasn't always channeled in the right direction. If you thought teaching regular kids was tough, imagine dealing with two little geniuses who seemed to have a knack for causing chaos wherever they went. It started small at first. Harmless pranks like switching teachers' markers with identical ones that didn't work. Then came the bigger stuff. Once, they hacked into the school's computer system and changed the lunch menu to spaghetti tacos for an entire week. Another time, they set off a fake fire alarm during assembly, sending hundreds of students scrambling outside in confusion. Teachers would come and go, each lasting only a few weeks before throwing in the towel. Some quit outright. Others left quietly after realizing they were fighting a losing battle. Their dad tried everything. Private tutors? Nope, they drove them crazy too. Elite schools? Same result. Even homeschooling turned into a disaster when the hired instructor walked out mid-lesson, muttering something about never again. It got so bad that people started whispering behind his back, saying maybe the money had gone to his head and now his kids were paying the price. But deep down, he knew it wasn't about the cash, it was about finding someone who could actually connect with them. That's when fate stepped in, though neither of them realized it at the time. A friend recommended a teacher from Harlem, a woman who had spent decades working with kids no one else wanted to deal with. She wasn't flashy or famous, but she had a reputation for being tough yet kind, firm yet fair. People said she had a way of reaching even the hardest to reach students. Desperate and running out of options, the billionaire decided to give her a shot. When she arrived at the mansion, it was clear this wasn't going to be like anything she'd done before. The house was massive, filled with expensive art and furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. But what struck her most wasn't the luxury, it was the vibe. There was tension in the air, the kind you feel when things aren't quite right beneath the surface. The father greeted her politely but seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone. And then there were the twins sitting across from her. With smirks on their faces, already sizing her up. She introduced herself calmly, not letting their stares unnerve her. "I'm here to help," she said simply, meeting their eyes without flinching. For a moment, there was silence. Then one of them, Ava, leaned forward and asked, "What makes you think you can handle us?" Her tone was challenging, almost mocking. Elijah, her brother, nodded along, clearly amused. Instead of answering directly, she smiled slightly and pulled out a tablet. "Let's find out together," she replied. And just like that, the game began. The first session was a test for all of them. Within minutes, the twins were doing what they did best, pushing boundaries. They ignored her instructions, cracked jokes under their breath, and even managed to sneak onto her laptop while she wasn't looking. Most teachers would have lost their cool by now, but not her. Instead of yelling or storming out, she stayed calm. When they tried to hack her device, she caught them red-handed and turned it into a lesson. "Nice try," she said, her voice steady. "But if you're going to break codes, let's do it properly." She redirected their mischief into something productive, introducing them to coding puzzles designed to challenge their quick minds. At first, they resisted, rolling their eyes and muttering complaints. But slowly, curiosity got the better of them. By the end of the session, they were engrossed, their earlier defiance melting away as they tackled the problems she presented. Still, it wasn't smooth sailing. Ava and Elijah weren't about to roll over and play nice just because she was different from the others. They pushed back hard, testing her limits at every turn. Sometimes they acted like they hated her, accusing her of trying to change them or make them behave like everyone else. Other times, they'd shut down completely, refusing to participate in anything she suggested. Despite the resistance, she never gave up. She saw glimpses of brilliance in both of them, flashes of creativity and intelligence that hinted at untapped potential. She knew they weren't bad kids. They were just lost, searching for something they couldn't quite put into words. And somehow she believed she could help them find it. Meanwhile, their father watched from the sidelines, unsure whether to hope or prepare for another failure. He admired her patience and determination, qualities he hadn't seen in anyone else who'd attempted to teach his children. But he also wondered if anyone could truly get through to them. After all, these weren't ordinary kids. They were forces of nature wrapped in tiny human bodies. Could anyone really tame that storm? Only time would tell. The second day started much like the first, with skepticism and a healthy dose of mischief. The twins were determined to see how far they could push this new teacher before she cracked. They had seen plenty of adults come and go, each one promising to fix them but ultimately leaving in frustration. To them, this woman was just another name on that long list. But deep down, maybe, just maybe, they were curious. Was she really different? Or would she crumble like the rest? She walked into the room carrying a stack of books and a small box filled with what looked like random items. Wires, batteries, a few gears, and even some colorful markers. Setting everything down on the table, she glanced at the twins with a pemens with a pung, inset everything down on the table. She glanced at the twins with a pemswits at a tens, with the twins with the penzozema, everything down on the calm smile. Today, she said, we're going to build something. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Build what? He asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. A robot to replace you? She chuckled softly, unfazed by his jab. Not quite, she replied. But if you want to build a robot later, we can definitely do that too. Ava crossed her arms, leaning back in her chair. You think we're just going to sit here and play with toys? She challenged. Not toys, the teacher corrected gently. Tools. And no, I don't expect you to sit quietly. I expect you to think, to create, to solve problems. For a moment, neither twin said anything. It was clear they weren't used to being spoken to this way. Most adults either yelled at them or tiptoed around their behavior, afraid to upset them. This woman, however, didn't seem intimidated. She wasn't trying to win their approval. She was simply doing her job and doing it with quiet confidence. Curiosity got the better of them. Reluctantly, they leaned forward, eyeing the contents of the box. What are we building? Ava finally asked, her voice softer now. That's up to you, the teacher said, pushing the box toward them. But whatever. It is. It has to work. No shortcuts, no half-efforts. Deal? Elijah smirked. Deal, he said, reaching for a piece of wire. Ava hesitated for a second longer before joining in. What followed was chaos, but productive chaos. The twins argued over ideas, debated designs, and occasionally bickered about whose turn it was to use the glue gun. At one point, Elijah accidentally snapped a gear in half, prompting Ava to call him clumsy. He shot back with a retort, and for a moment, it seemed like things might escalate. But instead of stepping in to scold them, the teacher let them sort it out themselves. You two need to figure this out, she said calmly. If you want this project to succeed, you'll have to work together. Blaming each other won't fix. That broken gear, her words hit home. After a brief pause, Elijah muttered an apology and Ava nodded, accepting it. Together, they came up with a solution, using duct tape to reinforce the damaged part. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, a small victory that sparked a flicker of pride in both of them. As the hours passed, the teacher guided them through the process without taking over. She offered suggestions when needed, pointed out flaws in their logic, and encouraged them to keep going when they hit roadblocks. By the end of the session, they had built a rudimentary motorized car, not flashy, but functional. When it moved across the table for the first time, Ava and Elijah exchanged a look of surprise and satisfaction. That was kinda cool, Elijah admitted grudgingly. Kinda? Ava teased, nudging him. It was awesome. The teacher smiled, watching the exchange. For the first time, she saw glimpses of teamwork between them. They weren't just siblings. They were partners, feeding off each other's strengths and compensating for weaknesses. It was progress, subtle but significant. Over the next few days, the sessions continued in much the same way. Each lesson was designed to challenge the twins, while keeping them engaged. One day, they wrote short stories, weaving plots so intricate that even the teacher was impressed. Another day, they tackled math puzzles that required creative problem-solving rather than rote memorization. Every activity pushed them to think outside the box, turning their natural curiosity into a tool for learning. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still moments of defiance, times when the twins tested her patience or outright refused to cooperate. Once, Ava stormed out of the room mid-lesson, muttering about how this is stupid. Instead of chasing after her, the teacher stayed put, letting her cool off. When Ava returned 10 minutes later, red-faced and embarrassed, the teacher simply said, "Whenever you're ready, we can continue." That simple act of respect, giving Ava space to process her emotions, spoke volumes. It showed trust, something the twins weren't used to receiving from adults. Slowly, they began to lower their defenses, realizing that this teacher wasn't there to judge or control them. She was there to guide them, to help them discover their potential. Behind the scenes, their father watched closely. He had always been hands-off when it came to their education, assuming that hiring experts would solve the problem. But seeing this woman interact with his children made him realize how much he'd missed. She didn't just teach them academics. She taught them life skills, patience, teamwork, resilience. Skills he hadn't known they needed until now. One evening, after the twins had gone to bed, he approached her in the study. "I have to admit," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "you're doing something none of the others could." "I don't know how you do it," she shrugged modestly. "It's not magic," she replied. "They're smart kids, really smart. But they've been misunderstood for so long that they don't know how to channel their energy properly. My job is to show them that they can be brilliant and kind, curious and respectful." Her words struck a chord. He thought about all the late nights he'd spent working, all the missed birthdays and family dinners. His success had come at a cost, one he was only beginning to understand. "Do you think?" He hesitated, unsure how to phrase his question. "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" She looked at him then, her expression soft but honest. "Kids don't hold grudges forever," she said. "But they need to feel seen, heard, loved. If you want to rebuild that connection, start by showing up for real this time." He nodded, determination settling in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful not just for his children, but for himself. Maybe it wasn't too late to fix what had been broken. Back in their rooms, the twins lay awake talking quietly under the covers. "She's not so bad," Ava admitted, tracing patterns on her pillow. "She's okay," Elijah agreed, though. His tone suggested he wasn't ready to fully concede. Still doesn't mean I like school, Ava laughed softly. Yeah, well, neither do I, but I kinda liked making that car today. Me too, Elijah confessed after a pause. Maybe tomorrow won't suck as much. And just like that, a tiny seed of change took root. Neither of them realized it yet, but those small moments, the laughter, the shared victories, the quiet understanding, were laying the foundation for something bigger, something transformative. As the weeks rolled on, something remarkable began to happen. The twins were still far from perfect. They argued, they pushed limits, and there were days when their old habits threatened to resurface, but there was a shift. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was subtle, like the first hint of spring after a long winter. And it all started with the teacher's quiet persistence. She didn't just teach them facts and figures. She taught them how to think about themselves and the world around them. One morning, instead of diving straight into lessons, she brought out a deck of cards. Not ordinary playing cards, but ones covered in thought-provoking questions. Today, she announced, we're going to play a game. Elijah groaned immediately. A game? Seriously? Can't we just skip to the robots? Not this time, she said firmly, shuffling the deck. This is about getting to know each other better, including yourselves. The twins exchanged skeptical glances. Getting to know people wasn't exactly their strong suit. They lived in a bubble of privilege where adults tiptoed around them and peers either idolized or resented them. But the teacher wasn't asking for anything complicated, just honest answers. Here's the rule, she explained. You draw a card, read the question aloud, and answer it truthfully. No skipping, no dodging. Deal? Ava hesitated, then shrugged. Fine, but if it gets boring, I'm out. Fair enough, the teacher replied, sliding the deck toward her. Your turn. Ava picked up a card and squinted at the question. What's one thing you wish people understood about you? She frowned, clearly unprepared for such a personal query. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Finally, she muttered, I wish people knew I'm not as mean as I seem. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the room felt quieter somehow. Even Elijah looked surprised, though he quickly masked it with his usual smirk. Yeah, right, he teased lightly. You're a terror. I'm serious, Ava shot back, her cheeks flushing. Then, softer, people always assume I'm rude because I don't smile enough or whatever, but I'm just tired of pretending. The teacher nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. That's brave of you to admit, she said gently. And now Elijah knows too. Your turn. Elijah scowled, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of sharing his own feelings. He drew a card reluctantly and read it aloud. If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be? For once, his quick wit deserted him. He stared at the card, frowning deeply. I don't know, he mumbled finally. Maybe having more time with Dad. The admission caught everyone off guard, including Elijah himself. He shifted awkwardly in his seat, avoiding eye contact. It's stupid, he added quickly, trying to brush it off. Forget it. It's not stupid, the teacher said firmly. It's important. Do you want to talk about it? He shook his head, but the tension in his shoulders told a different story. Ava glanced at him, her expression softening slightly. Me too, she admitted quietly. I hate that he's always working. Like, why does he even bother if he never has time for us? Their father wasn't present for this conversation. He rarely was, but his absence loomed large over everything. The teacher recognized the pain behind their words. Two children craving attention from a man who loved them deeply but didn't know how to show it. She decided to address it head on. Later that evening, she sat down with her dad in the study. They miss you, she said bluntly. Not the money or the fancy house or any of that. Just you, as their father." He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I know," he admitted, "but my work, it's demanding. If I stop, everything falls apart." "Everything except your family," she countered softly. "They're falling apart too. And unlike your company, they can't rebuild themselves." Her words hit home harder than she expected. He sat silently for a while, staring at the floor. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. I've been selfish. What should I do?" "Start small," she advised. "Eat dinner with them. Ask about their day. Be present, even if it's just for 10 minutes. That's enough to let them know they matter." The next night, he did exactly that. When the twins walked into the dining room, they found him already seated, waiting. No phone, no laptop, just him. "Hey," he greeted them awkwardly. "Thought we could have dinner together tonight." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine," he chuckled nervously. "Just thought it'd be nice to catch up." Elijah smirked, clearly suspicious. "You sure you're not sick or something?" "Nope," their dad replied, smiling despite the jab. "Now sit down before the food gets cold." As they ate, he asked questions he hadn't bothered with in years. How was school? What projects were they working on? Did they enjoy spending time with the teacher? At first, their answers were short and guarded, but gradually they opened up. By dessert, the conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and shared stories. It was a small step, but it made a world of difference. Over the following weeks, their dad made a conscious effort to be more involved. He joined them during some of the teacher sessions, marveling at their creativity and intelligence. He cheered them on when they succeeded and offered encouragement when they stumbled. Slowly but surely, the gap between them began to close. Meanwhile, the teacher continued to peel back layers of the twins' personalities. She discovered Ava's passion for storytelling, coaxing her to write vivid tales filled with adventure and emotion. Elijah, on the other hand, thrived on logic and problem-solving, so she introduced him to advanced robotics kits that challenged his technical skills. Together, they combined their talents, creating interactive storybooks powered by simple AI programs. Elijah designed. One project stood out above the rest, a choose-your-own adventure book where readers could make decisions that altered the storyline. Ava wrote the narrative, crafting rich characters and unexpected twists, while Elijah programmed the mechanics, ensuring smooth transitions between choices. When they presented it to their dad, his eyes widened in amazement. "This is incredible," he breathed, flipping through the digital pages. "You two did this? Together?" "Yeah," Ava said proudly, glancing at Elijah. "We actually worked on it without killing each other." "Barely," Elijah joked, earning a playful shove from his sister. Their dad smiled, genuinely moved. For the first time in ages, he saw his children not as problems to solve, but as individuals with unique gifts and boundless potential. It was a humbling realization and a reminder of why he'd fought so hard to provide for them in the first place. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, a storm hit, one that threatened to undo all their progress. A local newspaper published an expose on the family's business practices, accusing their dad of unethical behavior. The article painted him as ruthless and greedy, sparking outrage among the public. Overnight, the twins became targets of ridicule at their former school, mocked for being spoiled brats whose father cared more about profit than people. Hurt and angry, they lashed out again, blaming the teacher for exposing them to vulnerability. "If you hadn't made us care about this stuff, none of this would have happened," Ava shouted during one particularly heated session. "You think we're better off ignoring the world?" The teacher countered calmly, "Because trust me, that won't protect you. Running away from problems only makes them worse." "But what's the point?" Elijah demanded bitterly. "No matter what we do, people are going to hate us anyway." "That's not true," she said firmly. "Yes, life will throw challenges your way. People will judge you, criticize you, and sometimes treat you unfairly. But how you respond defines who you are. Do you let it break you, or do you rise above it?" Her words lingered in the air, planting a seed of resilience. The twins didn't believe her, not fully, but they listened. And deep down, they wanted to prove her right. The fallout from the newspaper article was brutal. It felt like the entire world had turned against them. Friends they thought they could trust stopped talking to them. Strangers online posted nasty comments, calling their dad a crook and labeling the twins as entitled brats who didn't deserve any of the privileges they had. For kids who were already struggling to find their place in the world, it was devastating. At first, the twins reacted exactly how you'd expect. They shut down. They refused to leave the house, skipping meals and spending hours locked in their rooms. When their dad tried to talk to them, they snapped at him, accusing him of ruining their lives. Even the teacher couldn't get through to them. During one session, she walked into the study to find both of them sitting silently, staring at their laptops with blank expressions. They're reading the comments. Their dad explained quietly when she asked what was wrong. "I told them not to, but..." She nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. Social media was a double-edged sword, powerful enough to amplify voices but cruel enough to crush spirits. She knew she couldn't shield the twins from the negativity completely, but she could teach them how to face it. That's where her next lesson came in. "Today," she announced firmly as she sat down across from them, "we're going to talk about resilience." Elijah looked up briefly, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Resilience? What's that supposed to mean?" "It means bouncing back," she replied simply. "Life throws curveballs, sometimes some bigger than others. Resilience is learning how to catch those curveballs instead of letting them knock you down." Ava scoffed, crossing her arms. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one everyone hates." The teacher didn't flinch. "Actually, I've been hated before," she said matter-of-factly. Her tone caught their attention. Both twins looked at her, surprised. "Really?" Elijah asked skeptically. "Absolutely," she continued. "When I started teaching, some people didn't think I belonged in the classroom because of where I came from. They assumed I wasn't good enough. But here's the thing. Their opinions didn't define me. Only my actions did." She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady and warm. "What people say about you doesn't change who you are. Sure, it might hurt. It's okay to admit that. But letting anger or fear control you, that's giving them power over your life. And trust me, you don't want to do that." For a moment, neither twin said anything. Then Ava spoke up, her voice softer this time. "But what if they're right? What if we are spoiled? What if Dad really is bad?" The question hung in the air, heavy and raw. Their dad, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. Kneeling beside them, he placed a hand on each of their shoulders. "Listen to me," he said earnestly. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, big ones, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to fix them. But I love you two more than anything. Don't ever doubt that." His words seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. The teacher seized the moment. "Your dad's working on being better," she said. "And so can you. Instead of focusing on what people are, saying focus on what you can do. Actions speak louder than words." With that, she pulled out a stack of papers and a few markers. "Here's the plan. We're going to create something, an exhibit, that shows the world who you really are. Not the headlines, not the rumors, but the truth. Something positive, creative, and undeniable." The idea intrigued them, even if they pretended otherwise. Like what? Ava asked cautiously. Anything you want, the teacher replied. But it has to reflect who you are, your talents, your passions, your values. Let's turn all this negativity into something meaningful. Over the next few weeks, the project consumed them. It became their escape-away to channel their frustration and sadness into something productive. Ava poured her heart into writing stories that explored themes of forgiveness and redemption, while Elijah designed interactive installations that allowed visitors to engage directly with the content. One piece featured a robot program to respond to kind words versus harsh ones, demonstrating how language impacts others. Another showcased a timeline of their journey, highlighting moments of growth and transformation. Their dad joined in. 2. Offering ideas and resources to bring their vision to life. He rented out a local gallery space and helped them set up the exhibit, which they titled From Chaos to Creation. It was a bold name, but fitting. The twins wanted to show the world that they weren't defined by their past or by the opinions of strangers. On opening night, nerves ran high. The twins stood near the entrance, watching as guests began to trickle in. Some were family friends. Others were complete strangers curious about the buzz surrounding the event. At first, the twins hovered near the back, unsure of how people would react. But as visitors moved through the exhibit, their expression shifted from skepticism to awe. "This is amazing," one woman murmured, examining Elijah's robotic display. "It's so clever and powerful." Nearby, a man read aloud from one of Ava's stories. His voice filled cost nothing. In the heart of Paris, there's a restaurant that feels like it was pulled straight out of a dream. Its name? Le Ciel Bleu. The walls are painted a soft shade of gold, and chandeliers hang from the ceiling like sparkling jewels. Every dish served here is crafted with care, each one more beautiful than the last. It's not just food, it's art on a plate. And if you're lucky enough to get a reservation, you'll find yourself surrounded by some of the wealthiest and most influential people in the world. On this particular evening, a billionaire businessman walked into the restaurant with his entourage. He was tall, confident, and dressed in an expensive suit that screamed success. His presence commanded attention, and everyone in the room seemed to notice him as he made his way to a corner table. This man wasn't just rich, he was powerful, known for making deals worth millions without breaking a sweat. But there was something else about him, too. He had a sharp tongue and a knack for sizing people up quickly. Sometimes, maybe even too quickly. As they settled into their seats, the billionaire picked up the menu. It was written entirely in French, elegant cursive letters dancing across the page. Turning to his companions, he smirked and said, "You?" "No, I bet most people who come here can't even read this thing." His voice carried just enough for nearby tables to hear, though it wasn't loud enough to seem rude. Still, the comment hung in the air, laced with a hint of arrogance. His friends laughed politely, nodding along. One of them chimed in, "Yeah. Probably half these tourists don't have a clue what they're ordering." They all chuckled, enjoying the moment of superiority. After all, they were in Paris, the city of lights, culture, and sophistication. To them, speaking French, or at least pretending to, was part of the experience. Just then, a young woman approached their table. She was wearing the uniform of the waitstaff, a crisp white blouse tucked neatly into a black skirt, paired with comfortable shoes meant for long hours on her feet. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a notepad in one hand. At first glance, she looked like any other server working hard to make ends meet. But there was something about her demeanor, a quiet confidence, a calmness, that set her apart. The billionaire glanced at her briefly before returning his focus to the menu. Without looking up, he muttered under his breath, "I doubt she speaks a word of French." His friend sitting next to him caught the remark and snickered quietly. Unfortunately for both of them, the waitress heard every word. She stopped mid-step, standing perfectly still for a moment. Then, with a small smile playing on her lips, she cleared her throat softly. "Good evening," she began, her voice warm but firm. "May I assist you with your order?" The billionaire looked up, surprised. He hadn't expected her to speak so soon or with such poise. Deciding to test her, he leaned back in his chair and switched to French. "Excusez-moi, mademoiselle." He started, his accent polished and precise. "Pourriez-vous nous recommander un plat principal?" Translation: Could you recommend a main course? For a split second, the room seemed to freeze. Everyone waited to see how the waitress would respond. Would she stumble over her words? Apologize and admit she didn't understand? Or worse, try to fake her way through it? Instead, she smiled again, this time brighter. In flawless French, she replied, "Bien sûr. Si vous aimez le poisson, je recommande vivement le saumon en croûte d'herbes avec une sauce citron beurre blanc. C'est un de nos plats les plus populaires." Translation: Of course. If you enjoy fish, I highly recommend the herb-crusted salmon with lemon butter sauce. It's one of our most popular dishes. The billionaire blinked, stunned. Not only had she understood him, but her response was delivered with perfect grammar, pronunciation, and an accent that sounded native. Even his companions exchanged glances, clearly impressed. For someone who prided himself on being able to judge people accurately, this was unexpected and humbling, but the waitress wasn't done yet. Sensing his surprise, she added politely, "Monsieur, reading the menu is the least of my concerns." With that, she turned to take the rest of their orders, leaving behind a table full of wide-eyed guests. As she walked away, the billionaire couldn't help but stare after her. Who was she? Where had she learned to speak French so well? And why? Was someone with her level of skill working as a waitress in a fancy restaurant? These questions swirled in his mind, gnawing at him. Something about her intrigued him, not just her language skills, but the way she carried herself. There was a strength in her eyes, a quiet dignity that suggested she was more than met the eye. Before leaving the restaurant that night, he discreetly asked the manager for her contact information. When questioned about why he needed it, he simply said, "I want to give feedback about the service." But deep down, he knew the truth. This encounter had shaken him in ways he hadn't anticipated, and he wanted to learn more about the woman who had proven him wrong.